Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Little Round Top. We're at the position of the 20th Main with Superintendent Steve Sims. Once again, thanks for having us, Steve.
Thank you, Matt.
We're going to show you the progress that has been made since last April when we were out here on the rehabilitation of Little Round Top. And Steve, let's start with what we're standing on right now.
All right. Well, we're standing on a stabilized aggregate trail. And what this trail is made out of is a locally quarried source. We call it the Antietam base, and then we mix a glue in it and compact it down so it becomes a walkable surface that is fairly durable. It does require some maintenance, and we'll have to figure out what that looks like once the visitor's back out here, but it's held up extremely well in the weather and contractor actions as well. So very encouraged by this new trail surface. It blends in quite nicely, I think.
Yeah, and it feels nice under the feet, if I may add that observation.
Well, you know, if I may.
Yes.
We've got three reasons why we're out here.
Okay.
And why we closed Little Round Top for rehabilitation. It's preservation of the landscape. And through that preservation effort, we're trying to take as light of touch as possible on the landscape. And so by putting an aggregate trail in versus concreting everything, it blends in, it feels more natural, and is more sensitive to the landscape. So we want to preserve this landscape at the same time as providing visitor access, and so we got to strike that balance.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, it just, if you look up here, it just looks nicer than asphalt. You know, it looks like it's just dirt, like a dirt path, but it moves. Exactly. It feels like something closer to asphalt.
Right. And by putting these paths in where not only do they blend in, but they're recognizable.
Yeah.
My hope is that the visitor says to themselves, that's a trail and that's where I need to walk.
Right.
And so by staying on trail, it actually helps us preserve and protect Little Round Top, your park, here at Gettysburg. And so as we walk through this, through the site this afternoon, you know, take a look at where the trails are. That's where we'd like people to stay. We did construct gathering areas and space because we do get bus groups. We got licensed battlefield guides in their groups. And so there needs to be gathering spaces, and we'll see those up on the summit. But you know, three things again: preservation, number one. Secondly is safety. You know, as you may recall, we've had one bus parking spot here at Little Round Top. And that parking spot was on the left-hand side of the road, and people would offload into traffic. When we finish, we'll have 7 bus parking spots.
Yeah, and without really ruining anything. Like, you were able to make that space without destroying anything. And I think you'll be surprised when we get up there, you see what I'm talking about. Pleasantly surprised.
Appreciate that lead-in. Yes.
Sure.
And then thirdly is accessibility. And we never had an accessible trail to the summit of Little Round Top, so we've constructed accessible pathways. Those are predominantly exposed aggregate concrete, so the visitor who may be wheelchair bound or have some mobility challenges can see that concrete and say, that's going to be accessible, that'll be easier for me to traverse. And we'll see some of that when we get up there. And I will say, the original design for this project, when we started in July of 2022, had a lot more concrete than what you'll see today. It had a lot more granite steps and such. And we heard you about Devil's Den. We don't have all that granite steps that you may see at Devil's Den.
Okay.
And we're listening because we want to be, again, sensitive to the landscape and let it blend in. And we've reduced that impact of that constructed space. But we're trying to find that balance, preserve and protect, and provide for that visitor enjoyment.
Very nice. Now, we started on the 20th Main Monument here, and just, you pointed this out before we started, and I just want everybody to know, if you caught the dirt on the monument, that's going to be cleaned. Why is that there? What's that about?
So during most of the project, since July of 2022, the contractor has encased all the monuments in plywood, blankets and plywood. And those blankets actually held moisture, and that's why the staining is there. The Parks Monument crew is already out here, and they will be cleaning all of these monuments. It's all removable and cleanable, and so we'll have all of these cleaned and ready to go for when we reopen.
Okay, good. Now, something you pointed out before, and we have 2 of our buddies standing on them right now. What is that they're standing on? We got Jason on the left and Cam on the right.
Yeah. So what they're displaying for us is what we call a water bar. And in standard trail construction, you'll see these water bars, and the reason they're called water bars is to keep the trail in place. So if we get a heavy storm and the water's running down that trail, it's going to hit that water bar. The water bar is going to kick that water off to the side so it doesn't erode out the trail. So that's going to assist us in the maintenance of these trails that are going in.
And then to your right, there is a new wall. Not a new wall, but a wall that we didn't see last time we were here. I don't think this was built up last time we were here.
Right. So I think, I don't have the exact number, but I want to say we have about 1,000 feet of breastwork reconstruction, if you will. So these breastworks are in the same alignment that they were before. We basically just took the stones that all fell down and just brought them back up and restacked them on these breastworks. So here on my left, we've got that one that's been put in and refurbished. Over here on the right, another one that's been refurbished. And I think another part of the breastworks is that, they really pop right now. So it's a really good discussion piece.
Yeah. And
we'll give a lot of fodder, especially for our guides, about July 2nd or July 3rd. And I know that'll be the debate.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Sure.
It actually sparks that conversation. We want conversation to happen out here so we can discuss, was this here, was this not here, and how does that impact battle movements on those 2 days? Why did they build them?
Now, I'm looking at them, and I saw the ones up at the top, which we'll see soon, and they look really nice. They're nice and neat and everything like that. What I'm afraid of is, the first time people come back and, little kids decide to climb on it, and within a month, they're obliterated again. Are there going to be any signs, no climbing on the wall, or what's the attitude towards that?
So what we haven't done yet is put fences around all the walls and all the trails to keep people. No, we're not doing that. This is the public's park, and there has to be a level of access to the park. We hope that people see these as resources that need to be protected and preserved, and they stay on trail. We're not going to have wall police out here. I don't have the staffing for that. But I'm soliciting the public's support, the visitor that's out here, to just be mindful of the space they're in, this hallowed ground, and that you too have a responsibility to help us preserve and protect it. This is your park, and we're going to keep it as maintained as well as we can, but we can't do it without the public support.
And since it is your park, let's go look at more of it, okay? Let's walk up here. So, to the right are the walls that we saw last time, but as we get through the walls, again, we're on this aggregate path, which is very nice. There's some fence up here. What is this fence? Is this the fence to keep the public out?
Well, in a way,
yeah,
temporarily.
Okay.
So behind this fence, you'll see freshly planted trees. There's going to be native warm season grasses that will be planted in here as well. And the fence is intended to allow that to take root so that it can be established. And this fence might be up for a couple years. A lot of you are familiar with Devil's Den. After we rehabilitate that, we have a fence still up, to allow the grasses to establish themselves in that space. And once they're established, then the fence will come down. Now,
is the goal to get undergrowth here like we have just a little further back there? Because one of the things I loved about Little Round Top was there was no undergrowth, there was no brush. And you could come up here and you can get an idea of what it might have looked like at the time. Same, or McPherson's Woods would have looked at the time. So is that the plan, to let it
So
grow
referring
up
to
totally?
the understory clearing?
Yes.
Yeah, so the intent here is to reestablish more of that forest look. So on this side of Little Round Top, it was still pretty wooded. This was pretty denuded of any vegetation prior to the start of the project, so we wanted to plant some trees, create some shade. I don't expect there to be a lot of undergrowth or brush to grow up here, because there's also a marker back there that's very popular, that people will want to get to. So, we want to see some level of vegetation regrowth in here so that we don't have just bare dirt, because bare dirt will erode away, especially with weather patterns. So we've planted trees in here. That's going to help keep things together. And then again, some grass hopefully will grow. But yes, I fully expect at some point that people are going to find their way to the marker back there. Hopefully not denude the grass, but we'll see.
Yeah, maybe just in a little trail out to the marker, and that's it.
Well, the original design had a concrete pathway.
Yeah, Yes, that's an important thing to remember.
We removed that.
Yeah, there was supposed to, wasn't it going to be a whole plaza, a concrete plaza?
So there was a plaza, a big concrete gathering area.
Yeah.
And truth be told, they actually installed it. And once they put it in, we looked at it and said, oh no, this is way too much.
Good.
And we had them remove it. There's now trees and soil in its place. You know, I think one thing to keep in mind is that we're under no illusion that we got it perfect.
Sure.
And that there are going to be some things that we're going to learn as we reopen the site and how people behave around these new paths, new access, or restricted access in some cases. And so, you know, you're going to apply that adaptive management style. We're like, okay, what's happening out there? Where are we seeing problems? How do we need to adjust to that so that we can preserve and protect this place?
Cam had a good question before. What was the question, Cam, that you had before?
How to deal with the overflow people when they come back.
Yes, so when you open, people are going to be rushing to get up here. Mm-hmm. How are you going to deal with that? What's the plan?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll say that the project does not resolve the traffic problem. So we will still have a lot of cars, a lot of traffic. We're not taking away any of the car parking spots, but we did add the 7 bus parking spots. So car traffic will likely be a challenge. Keeping people on trail will likely be a challenge. It will be crowded, I have no doubt about it. So the park staff was actually starting this week talking about what does reopening look like? What are the potential issues and challenges that we're going to face? How do we need to resource this so that we can manage the swell, as I think will happen. We'll have a swell of visitation in the beginning because we'll be reopening probably when the weather's getting nice next year.
Oh.
So that's going to be a huge challenge, and it's going to be crowded. There will probably be waits. I would think about that as you're coming back to Little Round Top when we reopen. You know, do you want to be with the crowds in the beginning, or would you rather wait till a time like this in fall when it'll probably be diminished? You got the leaves and everything else.
Yeah.
You can see through the understory. You know, I think the visitor just needs to keep that in mind because it will be crowded. There will be waits.
It's like, do you want to go to the beach on Memorial Day weekend, or do you want to go on an off weekend?
Yeah, and we will have people out here managing it. And so it's really going to depend. I expect it will be a rush.
Yeah, I do too. And rightfully so. People love this place and they miss it and they're very excited to see it. Now you said it will be opening when the weather is nice, but I remember when we were up here in April, I think we were talking to the foreman of and I asked you, I asked him, I said, do you have an end date? And you both kind of laughed and were like, oh, we're not getting into that. Like, you know, we're not going to give an end date. At that time, it was way too far out to be doing that.
Yeah.
Do you have an end date? Because people want to know. Is there an end date? When is this going to open? Or is it safer to say we're on track for the 18 to 24 months that was projected?
We're going to open when it's done.
There you go.
And what I mean by that, I know you want more than that. So let me give you a little bit of additional information, because I know we said it's going to be about an 18-month project. We're there already. And the reason it's taking longer is we basically paused this project last February, about 2 months worth, to redesign, back to looking at the sensitivity to the landscape, taking out the concrete.
Okay, interesting.
We paused this project because there's some things that were designed that we did not see in the original design that would be unacceptable, such as filling 5 feet of fill in critical battle areas.
Right.
So we eliminated that, and that just took some time. So that delayed the project. We've added work. I mentioned that we've added some additional breastwork and some additional stabilized aggregate trails recently to the contract.
When you say added.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
We increased the scope of the contract to rehabilitate more work.
It wasn't part of the contract before,
Right.
but you added it. They're not adding walls that never existed.
Correct. So we added about $500,000 worth of new rehabilitation work. So that's extending the project as well. So right now we're looking early summer.
Okay.
And my hope is by battle anniversary.
Nice.
And I'll just leave it there. I don't want to commit to a date.
Right.
Because anything can happen. We haven't gone through winter and the weather to see what kind of impacts, how that might impact the construction work.
Well, and that's what the foreman said when we were talking, was that, you know, this is a very weather dependent project. You get a month of snow, you lose a month probably.
You would lose a month of snow.
So, yeah. So you're saying you hope by the anniversary. Let's underline embolden and circle the word hope as the operative word there. It's not a guarantee, okay?
Not a guarantee.
We don't want people going, oh, it's definitely by the anniversary. Let's book the hotel, honey. My 2-year boycott of Gettysburg National Military Park is over. It's a hope. We don't
Thank
know.
you.
You're welcome. All right, let's continue along here because I think Josh Chamberlain gets enough attention, but there's so much more to see here. Any random thoughts you have, Steve, as we're walking through, just blurt them out.
Very good. No, you know, I think as a person walks through this place, now that we've done this work, you know, I think it's important to pause, do a 360, and look around, because you're going to miss something. You're going to miss some of the rehab work that we've done. You're going to see a different perspective of the terrain, the landscape. And if you're very familiar with, you know, the troop movements, you know, thinking about how they moved through this space. And I know the breastwork's going to be a problem for some, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
They're here.
Yeah, right. Just imagine they weren't. So now this path goes down the hill and out to the parking lot.
So this is Chamberlain Avenue.
Chamberlain Avenue, right.
And so this will go all the way down to Wright Avenue, where there's going to be a handicap parking spot. This sidewalk is handicap accessible, even though it's covered with leaves. It's, I believe it's 8 foot wide. It was a 12-foot wide asphalt road before. It's now this exposed aggregate concrete. We will have, basically right here where the fence starts, we're going to have some waysides. And so our division chief for interpretation, Chris Gwynn, who most of you probably know well, is designing these brand new interpretive waysides to put out here in the landscape. So all new waysides when we reopen.
Very good. Mark, why don't you go ahead of us so people can get an unobstructed view and not have to look at our behinds. Right, so now, but nothing has changed since April on Chamberlain Avenue, right?
No.
Okay, this is gonna be a long walk.
No, I think since April, it's the stabilized aggregate paths have gone in, the water bars, the breastwork rehabilitation, at least in this section of Little Round Top. And then straight ahead towards Sykes Avenue, since we went through a redesign phase, they haven't actually taken that sidewalk all the way out to Sykes yet. But that's probably going to happen in the next month or two, as long as the weather behaves.
What would you say has been the biggest challenge faced so far?
Biggest challenge? That's a really good question. You know, I think I'll rephrase that in not the biggest challenge, but the biggest thing that we needed to do here is remain vigilant and diligent in monitoring this project. So my team is out here every week, meeting with the contractor, reviewing the scope of work that they're planning to install that week, so that we can say, yes, that works for us, or no, that doesn't.
Okay.
So I've got my archaeologist, my resource planner, my interpreter, my communication specialist, my facility manager and their team out here every week, looking at it from different lenses about what does this piece of work mean to me and my discipline, if you will. So that's why some of these decisions go slowly. That's one of the reasons this project goes slowly too. Not only is it all handwork, but we're wanting to make sure that we don't do anything irreversible. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Right. Which is why we keep using that wrong word. We increased the scope of the project to rehabilitate more breastwork and more trail, because we're not going to get out here again to do this. When
they were working on the 44th up there and they removed some of the fill and discovered the original ground that the battle was actually fought on, was that expected?
I don't know that we thought that far ahead, that we would hit that original terrain before the 44th was constructed. When it was exposed, we're like, oh yeah, of course. Right.
But does that make you pause it and say, okay, well, now that we have this, what do we do, and then adjust?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my team, we're documenting everything. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a record of this project that lives in perpetuity, so that people know 100 years from now what we did, how we did it. Some of the decisions, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, we wanted to make sure that we differentiated this new work that's going in some cases, from the historic work that's here, the monuments. And so it's just kind of some of that decision process of like, don't make that look exactly like the monument, because in the future they're going to confuse the two as which one came first.
Right, gotcha. All right. So now this is something that we saw back in April, and there were 3 different, what would you call it, tops? What do you call that? Surfaces. Mock-ups of the different surface material that they might use for these paths. And thank God they went with the aggregate that we're standing on, because I think we all agreed when we were shooting it that that's what everybody liked.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you took our advice. But this,
We're listening.
but this goes down to the 83rd, the old 83rd. And it's much safer, much smoother now. So you're not going to twist your ankle going down there. And I mean, that view with a clear path like that, I've never seen before.
Well, if you remember before, this looked more like a washout.
Yes.
And so it was this uneven, rocky terrain to walk down there.
Yeah.
So yeah, now we have a trail around the 83rd. There's a little bit of additional exposed aggregate, not exposed aggregate, stabilized aggregate, so that people can walk around the monument and read the names.
Yeah.
And then as you walk further down, we rehabilitated some additional breastwork just before you get to the, was it the 9th Pennsylvania monument down there. So yeah, it's, I wish we had more time. We walked down there because it's a wonderful experience walking through that space.
Well, that's something people are just going to have to do when it opens to go see. Because I bet you most people, unless they're the real intrepid types, they would go. But I don't think most people have gone down to that monument before. I know the one time I did, I twisted my ankle.
Uneven terrain, yeah.
Yeah. All right, now, so we're going to see something new, that not new, but new to us, that we didn't see back in April, which is the 16th Michigan. And now, is this what we're going to go on? Is this the Texas Trail that I've heard about?
Depends.
Okay.
So, I don't believe we're going to formalize a name for that trail, but a Texas Trail is one name. Confederate Attack Trail is the other name. So it's just a new trail down to Warren Avenue.
Okay.
So what was a social trail from Warren Avenue all the way up to the 16th Michigan, we formalized into a trail.
A trail, okay, good.
Yeah. Now what we're walking on is not done yet. It's contractor's access all the way out here. So what they've done out here is rehabilitated some additional breastwork.
Look at this.
And when you see this from the 44th, it invites you down here. It's like, oh, what's that? Let me come see that. But one thing I think, and this is part of the work that we added to the contract, is a trail to the Sharpshooter Monument.
Oh yeah, look at that.
So those of you that have had to traverse the brush and the ticks and the snakes, you now have a formalized trail all the way out to the Sharpshooter Monument.
This is nice. 'Cause I've been down here before, but it was all rough ground. And it's such a cool view up there too.
And I think, Mark, if you can look from over here, you'll see the trail that goes all the way down to Warren Avenue. The original design actually had this trail as an accessible trail and built up, really changing the elevations. We did not do that. We kept the original terrain elevations and built the trail within the existing landscape.
Yeah, that's cool, because you could see that from Devil's Den, and I've been wondering what that looks like from here.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Now, one thing for our viewers who may not have heard your podcast before is that we have an archaeologist that's working as part of this project, and so they are working ahead of the contractor to make sure that they've scanned the area before they put a shovel in the ground.
Right.
Because we want to make sure that we've identified and retrieved all the artifacts. We're not going to allow the contractor to do that on our
Where
on our
was
behalf.
this shell found?
Man, you stole my thunder.
Oh, sorry.
So leading into it. So we have the archaeologist that's out here, and they're putting in they're looking at one of the culverts down there, one of the outfalls. And so the archaeologist out there is metal detector, and down off of Warren Avenue, not too far off the road edge, was a 3-inch dire shell. And so we had EOD come out and detonate it, because it was live ordnance. We retrieved everything. I think we got about 75% of that shell recovered. We had the fuse. And so we tested the fuse, and the metal in the fuse ended up being predominantly copper, which was a telltale indicator that it was Confederately fired. So it's very likely that some Confederate troops' lives were saved when that thing did not go off.
From Union troops?
Well, I think from themselves.
Oh, I see what you're saying, because it was at their backs.
At their backs.
Yeah. Gotcha.
It's my guess.
Who knows? In the melee of battle, I mean, come on. So, all right. So now, can we go see the sharpshooter?
Absolutely.
Let's go over there. This is really nice here with this path. And what I like about it is it just feels like you're walking on dirt. Like, it's not like pavement or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It respects the surroundings.
Right. Now the bright green grass on your shoulders.
I've noticed that.
That is a temporary grass, if you will, to stabilize the edges.
Oh, okay.
They will come back and overseed that with a native grass seed that will take root. And so I would not expect it to be this green in the future.
Because I noticed up by the 91st PA, there's a big patch of it. And I was like, this is interesting. So that's what that's for.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It's an immediate stabilization grass.
Now our signal might be a little wonky here, but stick with us, folks.
It's probably about 3 months ago. We were discussing adding this trail into the scope of work, and I was like, well, I'm just going to walk out to the monument. I stopped like 50 feet in. I'm like, oh, it's just so overgrown. I'm like, no, we'll let the contractor do that.
Yeah.
So I think they did a really good job. The other thing that we did is that we added some vegetation control here on this slope of Little Round Top. So it all looks dead because they killed it.
Okay.
And so we're going to overseed it with some native grass seed. And the purpose behind this is to kind of manage some of these woodies that like to grow up through here and obscure the view.
Are they going to do a controlled burn before they open?
We will probably not be able to do a control burn before reopening, but it is in the cycle of doing more control burns up here.
Those are fun to watch.
Oh, wonderful.
And then there's the lake, Beaver Lake, down below.
There's our natural resource opportunity.
Yeah, okay. I gotta say it's nice because it looks nice from up here, and I've seen some birds that I've never seen before. Not that I'm a bird watcher, but I know there are a lot of them out there, and they appreciate the blue herons and other things I can't name or identify on site.
You can go ahead and admit it. You like it.
I do.
So, Mozart Monument down there is safe.
Safe, thank you.
So we've got,
Team
as you may
Mozart
recall, we had, there's actually 4 beaver dams throughout here. And near the Mozart Monument, the water level was starting to lap up against the base of that monument. So we contracted with a company named Beaver Deceivers International and installed 3 culverts, if you will, through 3 of their dams to lower the water around the monument. So that's our test. You know, if nature is starting to impede upon cultural resources or built infrastructure, we take action. That's Park Service policy. So it's starting to concern me, and that's why we put in the culverts. And I'm honestly surprised at how well it's maintained itself. The beavers haven't really rebelled, if you will.
Right.
And I know that people may disagree, but these beavers are actually very beneficial for the environment. They slow the water down, it filters the water before it goes down, because eventually this water goes to the Chesapeake Bay. The beavers also are some of our best volunteers.
They are. They cleared the area.
Love woody vegetation, so they help keep some of the woodies out of this area.
That's true. They really did help clear that little valley floor there.
So I think right now we've struck a balance, an agreement, if you will, and we'll continue to monitor the beavers and their activities.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have struck a balance. I think the Team Mozart people are happy and the Team Beaver people are happy. Although, who cares what the Team Beaver people think? Just kidding. No, yeah, I think you have struck that balance. Because that pond there, or the lake or whatever, is nice. But all this is back. So, you know, we've got that back. And the monument is not in danger. And it looks, you know, the way it's supposed to look. Historically-ish. Enough.
Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome. Just something I noticed that I wanted to say to anybody viewing it right now. The title of this video is way off because we had so many problems, getting this live stream started that we actually had to go back to an old live stream and use that. We didn't have the time to change the title. So if you're confused, join the club. All right, so let's head up now. We're gonna head up to the summit of Little Round Top.
And Matt, thanks for picking such a beautiful day.
You're right.
With fall colors, I think close to peak, I'm guessing.
Know. It really is nice. It's nice and warm. Beautiful colors. I never realized how big these boulders are on the slope of Little Round Top until you actually come and walk.
So beyond the breastworks up there, when they grubbed the vegetation out of there, all these boulders just like surfaced.
Yeah.
Which was an amazing sight because you could really visualize, you know, the terrain, the challenge, you know, what the soldiers might have gone through or tried to go through.
Yeah, it's hellish.
Yeah. Unforgiving.
Unforgiving. Here we have two random people just standing.
So over here, some active work happening over here I want to point out. So some breastworks are being rehabilitated around this end of Little Round Top. We have, well, we did obscure a social trail from the 44th down here. They'll probably have to reseed and reestablish that again because this is some of the work that we just added to the contract.
Now if somebody wants to come down from there, they have to go down and around.
So
the
intent, well, I should say part of the hope and intent of the design and some of these breastworks is that people will see the trail system to get down to the 16th Michigan. You got to walk behind the 44th and around, not traverse over the breastworks, because if people are all traversing over the breastwork's not going to be there very much longer. You have social trails, erosion, and we're going to end up where we were before we started this project. So the intention is being intentional about some of these design elements to make it obvious where we want the visitor to go.
Sure.
We're not trying to restrict access. We're just trying to say, hey, please go this way.
Yeah.
You'll get there. You might just have to go around, but it'll be safer because you're going to be on this stabilized aggregate trail, and you'll be able to see more, and you'll have waysides to see along the way.
Right.
Because if you start taking shortcuts, well, you impact the resource, you may impact yourself as well.
And you won't see as much either. That's the good idea, is you kind of force people to go by something to see. It's not like they're going down this way to get to this trail and they're going to see nothing along the way. There's the Vincent fell here marker and I don't know, a couple other things. Mark, just get a shot here so everybody can see. You got the breastworks in front of the monument, but you've got the retaining wall, which is new. That wasn't there before. So I just want to give them a shot from down here so they can get the full picture. Because when we get up there, it won't be as dramatic.
And this is a really good example of what we were talking about earlier about the material selection and making it look different than the historic materials. So we spent a lot of time deciding on what that veneer will be on that retaining wall. And so if you look at that veneer, which is the same veneer going on the wall, the retaining wall for the bus parking, which we'll get to, we'll be able to denote, hey, this happened in 2022, 2023. This is that project, and it's not historic. It's new work.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But it's still respectful of the era. Like it looks like it could be until you...
We want it to blend in. So for resource managers, they'll get it. The general public may or may not see it. That's okay.
But it's there.
It's there. It's part of how we in the Park Service try to manage resources. We got to know what's historic and what's not.
Right. So for those of you who didn't know what we were talking about before, when we were talking about plywood surrounding monuments to protect them, this is what it looks like.
Shall we head up that trail there?
Sure. Oh, we also have some new trees here too, right?
Yeah, new trees. So the trail down from the 44th, coming back from the 16th Michigan, will continue to Sykes Avenue, where there'll be a crosswalk over to the Chamberlain Avenue access. So hopefully people see that and know where to go. Oh, I also want to point out one thing. I think this is really neat. So at the beginning of the project, we identified all the trees that need to be removed with a blue dot.
Okay.
This is gray now, but the blue dot identified that, and we hadn't closed the site yet. And then we got a couple phone calls saying, hey, you're cutting down witness trees.
Ooh.
And we said, oh, let's take a look at this. And so we spent some time with folks that really have an affinity for witness trees and really have a good understanding of it. And we moved pathways. We changed the design, even from the very beginning, to save what we think are witness trees.
Now, is there no way to tell for sure? Like a core sample?
Cut it down. Or you could do a core sample.
Or a metal detector? Wouldn't that
Probably
detect
too.
some metal in there?
And, you know, at some point, I feel that, you know, it just comes cost prohibitive. So,
Yeah.
you know, we do have a system of trying to determine the age of these trees. You know, we measure up so far, we look at what type of tree it is, and we have a little formula that tells you how old it's supposed to be. What was interesting about that formula when we did start cutting down some trees is that these trees were actually older than we thought they were. The terrain at Little Round Top is pretty unforgiving. Not a deep soil profile. So these trees are actually growing, I guess they're just not growing as fast. They're just growing more slowly, but they're older than we think.
Oh, okay.
So it's hard to tell.
Huh.
So, you know, when people see these gray dots, to me, it's a good reminder of resource protection, preservation, that, you know, there's things that are very important to every person up here, and it may be different than somebody else's. And it's my job, because it's not my park, it's your park, to listen and to try to accommodate and try to do the best we can to ensure that people have agency in their park.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So there's a nice little gathering area that we've formalized here. We'll have a wayside up on top of the retaining wall with a historic photo of that little rock outcropping, that little
Regular
nest.
visitors would remember this was just a pile of rocks, not particularly in a wall before they closed down, because people kept climbing over it. So now it looks like you could fight behind it.
Oh, man. Okay. So this part of the trail just went in this week, and you can tell it's really soft.
Yeah.
And squishy. Well, they haven't put the glue in it yet.
Oh, okay. So that's done at a separate time.
Well, yeah, it's done at a separate time. And some of the restrictions on that glue is that you got to have 50-degree days for at least 24 hours, no rain for 48 hours, and after you put it in. And we've had some cold nights.
Yeah.
So we might be done with
Wait
gluing
till
this
spring.
season. So these will probably be some of the very few steps that you'll see constructed on this project. And that's just to get up here to the 44th. But this exposed aggregate concrete is an accessible pathway. Takes you all the way around.
Yeah, much better than the 4-foot drop coming right off
here.
these steps here.
Wow. This is much nicer, I think. So is there going to be a railing here?
No.
Nice. Nice.
So one of the things, however, we were talking about this week was, can we put a fence here temporarily when we reopen to allow this vegetation down here to establish? Because I'm pretty sure we get a bus of kids up here, they're jumping down.
Sure.
I mean, it's pretty inviting, but I think once the vegetation takes root and grows tall and you got tall grass.
Yeah. Or thorn bushes, that might deter people.
Some barberry.
Yeah, you're right.
No. But we want the vegetation to establish, because I think once you have vegetation established, it really provides at least a perceived barrier that, let's keep that vegetated and walk around.
Mark, did you get a shot of this monument down here and just this whole area with the wall? It's like, you're right. I think you said something about the view of it from up here. And it's completely different. Like, I have a totally different picture of the fighting up here simply because of the breastworks being easily discernible. That's fascinating.
It invites you down there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you definitely have to put something here because I just want to jump down and go. So, yeah, you'll need something.
And again, like we mentioned earlier, we don't know how the visitor is going to respond. We've got the same people up here every week that, aren't thinking about jumping across this. But if it's your only time ever here,
right,
you're not going to know, that, hey, maybe we should stay off the grass. That wouldn't seem, very evident.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. We'll see how the visitor responds, and we'll try to respond appropriately to find that, again, that balance of preservation and access.
Right. You can still, okay, so this is nice too here. Oh, look at this.
So we've got breastwork that's been rehabilitated all the way from here, the 44th, all the way down to the Warren statue. So as we walk down, you'll see all of that breastwork has been rehabilitated.
There's a Civil War hose. This is something, okay. So this, I'm just laying eyes on it for the first time, and you're going to do it with me. Patty O'Rourke's nose. Let's go look. Let's see. Oh, my Lord. Look at that. That's what he's supposed to look like. See? It's not a shiny golden nose. It matches the patina of the rest of the sculpture. That's amazing. It looks like a different monument just because of that one little detail. And that's just from being out here without being rubbed for a year and a half, right?
Right. So we've got a gathering area right here. There'll be a wayside or two in here as well.
Oh yeah, and
got some lemongrass. There will probably be a fence installed here when we reopen to keep people from walking across that grass.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So I just want to prepare everyone that what you see now is going to have some fences up when we reopen. And that's not permanent. That's to make sure that
you want to establish this.
The money that we're investing in this vegetation will not be for naught.
But what if you like lemongrass in your smoothies? Because
go to the smoothie shop.
Well, I guess. I miss this view. It's amazing how much I love it. I'd come up here often when it was open, And when it closed, I was like, that stinks. But, you get over it pretty quickly. But then you come back up and you're good. Oh, man, this is so pretty. Hurry up and finish this project.
Yeah. I think the absence of being up here for a lot of people will really make it a special experience when they come back up here again for the first time. That it'll be a homecoming of sorts, I'm sure, for a lot of folks.
It's like when, what's that show? When people get their houses made over.
Extreme Makeover?
Extreme Makeover? Is that what it is? Yeah, it'll be like that.
And so here's another gathering space, and it's in a good spot coming up the accessible sidewalk from the parking lot. You have another gathering space right here, and it's continues up, the accessible path continues up past the Hazlitt Battery.
Now this, if I recall, this was like a natural gathering spot, right? Where guides would take people, and that one down there too?
Denuded of soil and
Right.
vegetation, as I like to say.
Yes.
So is this uneven, rocky terrain. If you look next to that boulder and you see all that dirt and the rocks,
Yep.
that's the way this looked. So we know that people are going to gather here. This is a great spot. It's a great view. So we formalized it. We wanted to make sure that, back to the question earlier about how do we manage crowds, we got to give them space.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have the trail system, which is fairly wide, but people are going to want to gather. People are going to want to take their time and then just soak it all in, or have a conversation about this place. And so you got to give them space so they can get out of the way of everyone else that's trying to get somewhere else.
Right. Nice.
So these cannons, the Park Service monuments crew, the cannon shop, did refurbish all of these and reinstalled them before they put the sidewalk in.
Okay.
And so these are all done. They'll need to be
They look
cleaned.
freshly painted.
Yeah, freshly painted.
Yeah.
They'll need to be cleaned again before we reopen, but we want to make sure we get them up here before some of this new work goes in.
Yeah, but this is nice though too here, because this was also rough ground.
It was pretty rough ground. Now the original design, well, first of all, before we started the project, I think we just had a wooden fence, a low-lying wooden fence went through
right.
here. The design had us building a 5 to 6 foot retaining wall back there. And when you start thinking about the story of how these cannons got up here and the route they took, that retaining wall would be a negative impact to that visitor experience, to be able to tell that story, to be able to visualize what happened here. So we eliminated it.
Good.
And put in this little curb, if you will, which is recycled from the parking lot curbs, to retain this stabilized aggregate. And we were able to do so without putting in a big retaining wall. We didn't need a larger gathering space behind these cannons. So we reduced that space and hopefully preserved an important landscape feature and story element. Over here around the 91st, we just finished rebuilding the retaining wall around the 91st.
Really nice.
And then built these stabilized aggregate trail with some water, well, more steps than water bars, and access around the 91st.
This was the first thing I noticed when I got here. I came up here and I saw this and I was like, this is really nice. The retaining wall is nice, just everything around it, the steps, very nice. And then there's that patch of grass that I was talking about.
The green patch.
Yeah.
It won't be there forever.
It's kind of nice though.
It'll turn it, yeah. Well, I can see picnic blankets already.
Yeah.
But that will change before we reopen. And so actually, before we go on too further, and Mark, you can take a look back at the concrete sidewalk. One of the things we wanted to do, because this is wheelchair accessible, is that we wanted to provide a turnaround spot for wheelchairs.
Okay.
So we kind of had this bulbous termination to the concrete because we wanted wheelchairs to have a space to turn around and
pretty smart.
Make their way back.
And I meant to ask, is the rock that has the engraving on it about Hazlitt going down, is that still visible?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Very good. You didn't want people to be very upset if that was covered up.
My ask is just don't pencil in the engravings.
Right. Watch your step here, Mark.
So we have another somewhat pseudo gathering spot right here. There's going to be some additional waysides. Again, another great viewpoint.
Yeah.
So we've got 4 of them here on the summit. And again, back to the crowds, buses, people are going to need space. And so we need to make sure we find space for them so that we can preserve the landscape, preserve the vegetation, but also provide space to enjoy and understand this.
Much better than the idea of observation decks built in these spots. Was that a rumor or was that like an original plan that got ditched?
So the original design, where we stopped the concrete, the original design had the accessible concrete going all the way down to the Warren statue.
Okay.
To do so required a building of a retaining wall. And then we had some issues with that, and there was a conversation about, well, we'll just do an above-ground deck and a boardwalk all the way down. And we thought about that, and then at the end of the day, we said, back to light touch on the landscape. We won't have accessibility all the way down to the worn statue, but the juice is not worth the squeeze to put that in. We wanted to preserve this terrain as much as we could, because there was a retaining wall in here before that we took out.
Yes.
We actually exposed that large boulder that was hiding underneath it.
Oh, that's right.
And
Right there in front of you, Mark.
we wanted to, again, light touch on the landscape and collectively determine that, it just wasn't going to be worth it. And, down the road, back to adaptive management, if we see that there's a need to create accessibility all the way down, we can add it.
Sure.
There's nothing that precludes us from changing things in the future. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, but it doesn't preclude us from doing it.
Nothing's impossible.
Well,
Some things are impossible. How about down there in front of that wall? Is that going to stay the way it is, or what's the plan for that?
there's probably going to be some revegetation of that space.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so this aggregate goes all the way down here.
Yeah, so behind the Warren statue, we've got a nice gathering spot.
Is it built up a little? It
Maybe
seems
slightly.
like it's a little higher.
Maybe slightly.
Yeah.
We're trying not to dig, but we're also trying not to fill.
Right.
So they may have removed the vegetation that was here, and then they put about a 4-inch layer of the stabilized aggregate
Yeah, this
down.
is much higher than I remember because the boulder. Can I climb up there?
You can do anything
No.
once, Matt.
No, I'm not going to do it at all.
But you see some of these rocks peeking out of this this little gathering area, and we wanted to integrate some of these existing features instead of having them remove them. I think that just really demonstrates the character of this space and how we try to really integrate the natural with the constructed.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think people are going to be very pleased with this. I hope they are, because I don't want to hear it.
Well, Matt, I'm listening. So
Okay, you listen.
I
then.
know we aren't perfect, but we're happy to listen and see what we can do to improve
No,
things.
but I have to say, it's a pleasant surprise to see how adaptable the Park Service has been on this project. Where you're saying you realize something and you say, take it out, or we need to move this over here. For me, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, I didn't know government was that flexible. I thought it was more like, this is what it says on the paper, this is what we're doing. So it's nice to see that.
Well, to that point, just before you and I got up here, we had a tour.
Yeah.
And we've been scheduling these, I guess, about quarterly, or where it actually makes sense. And these tours are for employees. They're for partners and volunteers, and licensed battlefield guides. And we invite them up here. So we had our second one today. We had one last Friday, and we've got another one next Friday for them because they are key stakeholders. And they are getting questions from the public because they're leading tours. They're volunteers out in the park, and we want to make sure they're informed of what we're doing out here, so that they can answer these questions. But also, what do you think? Give me some feedback. Do you like what you see? Do you see problems? We've actually been monitoring the response around the 44th retaining wall to see how people feel. Do you feel like you need a handrail, a barrier there? We're not asking them. We're just kind of like, how do you feel? What do you think? And just trying to get a natural response.
Right.
So that we can make decisions now before it's too late to change things, to make it more user-friendly, because the visitor knows what they want to do. But I would say the Park Service, we're here all the time. We know what we want to do, but that might not be what the visitor wants to do. And so we need to make sure that we're allowing space for other lenses, other viewpoints, and other ways that people like to experience their parks.
Well, I, for one, appreciate that, and I'm sure a lot of other people do. I know a lot of our audience do, because I hear from them, and that's what they say. So,
Okay, I'm glad.
kudos to you.
We're standing in a space that's currently being used as staging for the vegetation contractor, but this is a pretty large gathering area. A lot of it's covered with leaves right now. But there's going to be a crosswalk from the bus parking that's going to take people over here to this gathering space. There's another one on the other end, a crosswalk to the other end of the summit. where buses can offload and people can access these spaces. And so this will be a great orientation space, new waysides, visitor information, resource protection messaging, and we'll probably even have a little bit of a safety message to say, hey, this uneven terrain up here. There might be some steep areas. Please watch your step. Please be careful. Unless you want us to put handrails everywhere. I don't think that's the case.
No, we don't want handrails.
We'll see how the visitor responds.
Yeah, good. I like, Mark, you already panned around over there, but if you go again, I like the look of that retaining wall over there.
Well, do you want to go there next, or you want to keep going down the trail?
No, let's keep going down.
All right, we'll come back to the retaining wall and take a look at that.
Yeah.
I definitely want to address that and show you all sides of it.
Sure.
All right. Is this Pittsburgh down here, 155th? So, we put in this trail, and every single one of these trails, originally, there's a conversation of how far do you take it to the monument? Do you put a plaza around the monument? And that was a collective and collaborative process to figure out, how do we terminate these trails? Because if you plan to take it, and we'll come over to this one because I think it's a really good example. Over at the 146th, we stopped it right here.
Yeah.
And people will say, well, why'd you stop it here? You didn't take it all the way to the monument. Well, again, it goes back to light touch. Did we get it right? You tell us. But we didn't want to put so much in that it just becomes, the site becomes overburdened with improvements.
Sure.
And, so if we take it up to the monument, then the next question is, well, now we got to take it all the way around the monument, and then now you have this large space of improvements, or stabilized aggregate. So we decided, well, we'll just stop it here.
Yeah,
And we'll see what vegetation grows. You can see there's a fence to seal off a social trail.
Okay.
We want that vegetation to grow back. We'll see some other vegetation grows back. And then if there's a little bit of a social trail up to the monument, maybe that's fine.
Yeah.
We don't have to improve it with where everyone walks.
I think that's a great idea because you got the best of both worlds. I know that there's people that are going to miss the roughness of it all. In a way, I will too. But for people that don't like that, you got the aggregate all the way up to it, and they could stand here and they could read everything. If they really need to get up and see the other side of the monument, it's still
available to
They
them.
could do it.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. But I like the idea of it not being all improved. That there's some roughness to it. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And so again, we'll be listening.
Good.
And we'll be observing. So if something needs to be done here, we can add it. But once it's in, it's harder to take it out.
Right. And then, so now this path here, oh, go ahead.
I think we removed some vegetation so you can get a nice view of the Pennsylvania Monument.
Yes. That is true. That is a clearer view. Such a nice view. And it turned out to be, all the clouds are gone. It's pretty nice out now.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Just for us.
For Addressing Gettysburg.
And then, and this path here goes all the way out to the road.
Yep, let's go out to Sykes, and then we can walk down to where we're putting in some bus parking.
Okay.
And I got a little story down there too. Not that exciting, just a little one.
Oh, it's a story. Now I see a new feature up ahead, a big pile of rocks.
Yeah. Those were probably removed, at least this is my understanding, when they installed the retaining wall for the bus parking up top.
So those aren't staying
pile.
there?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like a new sculpture or something.
Oh yeah, that would go over well. No, man.
Like a scaled down model of Little Round Top, and put little army men on it. I don't know. Just a thought.
So the trail we're on will actually terminate into a concrete sidewalk. And that sidewalk will go all the way up to the summit, to our right, and then down Sykes Avenue down to another gathering area, which will be directly across from bus parking.
Okay.
So there's going to be 3 bus parking spots down on the right, basically where those mulch piles are at. That one tree, just on the first tree you see on the other side of that mulch pile, we believe is a witness tree.
Oh.
And we are adjusting the alignment of the road to allow that tree to remain. And because the original plans had that tree being removed. So we're gonna save that tree, still put in the bus parking down there. So these are some of the decisions we're making along the way. And then there's also gonna be a path to the right, which will take you back into the wood line and down to the intersection of Sedgwick and Wheatfield, where you have that gravel lot, where we have the porta johns and stuff down. So there's another trail back there.
Okay. Very
And there's
good.
some trails and the monuments to the monuments on your left as well.
Yeah, they don't get visited as much down there.
I think they will with the bus parking that we're putting in down there. My guess is some people aren't going to want to walk up this hill.
I certainly don't.
And they'll have a great experience, a great story to talk about down in that space.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, so the next thing, you see some of the concrete culverts down the hill.
Oh yeah.
One of the things that will go in is storm drainage. And so that's kind of the next step, is getting the storm drainage in here, because what they're going to do is they're going to put a curb on both sides of the road. I believe this road's 20 foot wide, 22 feet wide. And when they put the curb in, that road's going to be 15 foot wide. And the same thing on the approach up from the other side of the hill. The road will be essentially narrowed to 15 foot wide curb on either side. And the intent behind that is, well, what's going to happen when that gets put in is traffic will slow down.
Yeah.
Because people will be a little bit more constricted. And two, you're not going to have people parking on the shoulders as we have traditionally had.
Yeah.
So that's going to help preserve the landscape. Plus, we've got sidewalks on the side of this road, and we want to preserve those people walking on the sidewalks.
Preserve the landscape and the people.
We don't just preserve resources, we want to preserve people.
That's a good idea. There's been enough death here. All right, cool. So you want to head up to
Let's
this
walk on.
other wall here? How we doing, Cam? Good.
So you can see the retaining wall on the left. When the sunlight hits it, it is bright white.
Okay.
That is not the finish. It is a stamped concrete modular retaining wall, and that concrete will get stained.
Oh.
It'll be stained a gray color so that it will blend into this terrain pretty well,
That's pretty cool.
at least from a color standpoint. And then you can see the veneer stone facing the roadway, same stone we used on the 44th monument. And this retaining wall was put in so that we can fit in 4 bus parking spots up here at the summit.
So you've extended the road, right? Because where the pavement ends is the original road?
Yep.
And then that was just rough gravel or whatever where...
Well, if you remember, we walk over to the edge of the road. For those of you that are familiar with being at Little Round Top, probably about 4 or 5 feet off the edge, we had those concrete curbs haphazardly laid up along this edge, and people were parking on the shoulder. So, you know, effectively we've extended it probably a good 15 feet into this hillside to then create a formalized bus parking. So when people park, or when the buses park up here, they'll offload onto a sidewalk, and then they can either go north or south, or there'll be crosswalks. They'll take them up to the summit.
What did you say, 4 crosswalks? 2.
2 from the bus parking here, 1 on either end. There's 1 crosswalk at the second bus parking further on the north. And then there's a crosswalk from Chamberlain Avenue across the street.
So total of 4, but 2 right
Total
here.
of 4. Yep.
Okay. And then how about over here on this side where we used to pull in? Are there still going to be parking spaces?
Yep. So we're not changing the number of car parking spots. Those will be the same.
Okay.
We're actually going to plug that wall up where there used to be a trail that would go up.
right there.
We're going to fill that in. We really want people to go to the edges.
Oh, okay. So there,
come
let's get a good long last look, folks, because that trail's going to be gone.
It's already gone.
Oh, it's already gone. Yeah.
We're just putting in the foundation for the wall there. And so as we move forward, or I should say south, and look at this retaining wall, you'll see that there's a granite cap that's been put on top of this retaining wall. And then there's going to be a metal handrail that has to go on top of that. and that's going to be for safety so people don't
Jump off.
And so we're going to have a railing that goes on top of this wall, and that, I believe, is the only railing of this project.
Okay.
Yeah. And so here's a sample of the curb granite that's going to go in. And so we're going to have that curb on both sides of the roadway, all the way up from the south side to the north side on Sykes Avenue. I think a little further down, they've got a little mock-up of what it looks like in the ground.
And this is the same material that was originally over there, right?
No,
But no?
This is new. This is imported in.
No, but I mean, it's not the original. I'm saying it's the same type, isn't it? Like the same stone? That's what
Then
Jason
the
said.
other curb over here. I think it's a little different.
The
stone.
original curb that was over there on that sidewalk, it's
think it's
just that was dirtier because it was 70-something years old. But this,
I think it's a different type of granite.
All right.
I think.
I'm not going to argue
I
with
will
you,
have
Steve.
to.
I'm not going to argue with it.
I know that one's out of North Carolina.
Okay. And it's granite?
It's granite.
Very
Mount
nice.
Airy granite is what it's called.
Oh.
And then we have a Mystic Black granite cap. And this is the granite that we see most of around the park.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's the cap on top.
That's what goes on there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I noticed, there's saplings around and why? Why not just why not just let nature take its course?
I think probably a couple reasons.
Okay.
One is we want to make sure that we put native species
Okay.
in the terrain. If we did nothing, non-natives might take root. So we want to make sure that we plant native species of trees, grasses, shrubs. Second thing is erosion control. So by planting them, we can accelerate erosion control. If we don't plant anything, then erosion can happen. And thirdly, I feel that vegetation used in the right way could also help people, visitors, understand where to walk and where not to walk.
Yes.
So
Okay.
it's
like a subtle guide.
and then the cultural landscape, the historic landscape, what was here
Yeah.
in 1863. We know that the west side of the hillside was the trees were removed. This side, the trees weren't removed.
Right.
And so we took out some trees as part of this project, and we're strategically putting back some trees to fill in the gaps.
Okay. Fair enough. Now, what's this here?
So what you're looking at here is a work in progress. There's going to be a little gathering space over here for when buses offload. They'll be able to gather here, get oriented, and then where this gravel is and it goes up the hillside is an accessible sidewalk to get up to the summit. And so the original retaining wall over here on our right is kind of partially covered by this gravel pile. We're going to continue that stone wall until it basically dies into the hillside. And then on the other side of the sidewalk, there's going to be, from that boulder on the other side of the concrete blocks, there's a boulder. We're going to taper that same type of wall until it terminates about a foot above grade at the entrance point of this accessible sidewalk up to the top.
You speak like an engineer.
I try.
He was, ladies and gentlemen. That's the joke. Not the kind that drives the train. I made that mistake. All right, can we walk up there and get one last look out?
Watch your step.
I have some questions for you that our patrons submitted.
All right.
If you don't mind, when we get up there, we can ask them some questions, or ask their questions.
Well, we already
Watch
talked about the
yourself here.
beavers.
Yeah, we already got the beavers out of the way.
We got the beavers out of the way.
That's last year's news. Nobody asked about the
Oh.
beavers this time.
Okay. Now when we have our tours for friends and family, I'll call it, we actually had a wheelchair that we brought up here, and we've asked people to try it out
Right.
and see how accessible it is, which I think really helps people see what we're trying to do up here, and everyone is 100% on board.
Well, you could tell. You could just see by the way the slope, like, was it the grade? Is that the word I'm looking for?
Sure.
Of this bend here. Mm-hmm. Kind of goes up, and then when you go down, it goes up, so you're not going off the edge.
Yeah.
And then there's points where it levels out as you're coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Well, let's see. What should we do here? Let's do it like this. Why don't you and I stand on either side of the tube, and Mark is sitting over there. Sorry, Mike. And I'll ask some questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Unless there's anything else you want to show us.
I think you've seen it all. I
think we have.
That was a nice walkthrough.
It was. It really was. Thank you for letting us do it.
Got a pretty good comprehensive look at what we're doing, the different materials we're using up here, the philosophy, the approach, the sensitivity, the transparency of what we're trying to do up here.
Yeah. All right, let's see here. Patrick LeBeau, he asks, when will there be a guide exam?
So we're actually working on that right now. I believe the team has met with the group that is going to facilitate the next exam, which includes licensed battlefield guides that are part of that exam process, currently licensed. And so the intent is by this year is the preparation phase in which we're going to put everything together so that we can start testing either late 2024 or early 2025.
All right. Rick Scare says, in the future, will the park be working to recreate the battlefield's 1863 appearance on all parts of the battlefield, or maintain it where work has recently been done, as in the case of places like Culp's Hill?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we want to maintain what we already have. Sustainable projects are key. And so we're focusing on those high visitation areas, those sensitive landscapes, and so if they're in a poor condition, we want to try to rehabilitate them. And as part of that rehabilitation decision, we want to sustain whatever we rehabilitate. So there may be a balance between what we can sustain and maintain versus what we rehabilitate. So if some, and there are lots of areas here that do not look like what they did in 1863.
No, right.
But if we rehabilitated all the woodlots and cleared all the understory of all the woodlots, we cannot maintain that.
No.
And so it would be a wasted effort. And so we're looking for ways to create representative spaces so that we can have that experience of that 1863 landscape, but we may not be able to do 100% of everything.
Gotcha. Andrew Ondish says, what was the most challenging aspect of running Gettysburg National Military Park, and what can visitors to the park expect as the transition is made to a new superintendent? Because in case you haven't heard, ladies and gentlemen, Steve is leaving. What was the date?
Oh, November 4th is my last day.
November 4th is his last day. And this is his final public appearance.
Thanks, Matt.
As superintendent, I mean.
What was the most challenging part of running it? That is a really good question. You know, I think the most challenging part about it would be understanding the expectation. And once you understand the expectation, and that could be from licensed guides, the visitor, your own staff, partners and community members, and other special interest groups, once you kind of have a grasp on what those are, it's a little bit simpler to have those conversations and to figure out what you need to do there.
But that's a lot of expectations. Those are all different expectations.
They're competing expectations.
So you have to be a
sometimes.
good juggler.
I think you have to be transparent, fair,
Okay.
and honest. And I feel I've been that way because you just need to tell people what you can do and what you can't do. And be reasonable,
Yeah.
be approachable, have a conversation, and allow people to speak. Allow people to have a voice. And it's not that you may agree, it's not that you can do it all, but listening is a key component, I feel, of any park manager's job. And I think whoever comes in behind me, they just need to listen, observe, understand what this place means, and how to be responsive and respectful to those that cherish this place. And it's not about you.
Right.
It's not about me. It's not my park. It's your park.
Yeah.
And I have the honor of facilitating the stewardship of it. And I think anybody that comes into this position, I feel, should have that mindset.
And that's a tough job, though, because this place, I'm sure to a degree, all national parks have their fans, for lack of a better word. But like this place drives people crazy. They love it so much.
It's a great problem to have.
It
Because
is.
if people didn't love this place, it would cease to exist.
That's a great point.
Parks don't exist without the public.
Yes.
And that's a key component
true.
of these national park sites.
Yeah.
And it can, so we have a mission in conflict or in tension all the time.
Right.
Preserve and protect it in perpetuity, but provide access. And so you got to find that balance in all of these
But that's got to be
things.
tough, though. I mean, you have your job. Everybody has a boss. You have your boss. You have your job. You've got to do what you're supposed to do. And then the people, they have
my
their
boss,
own.
too.
Well, that's the other thing. You've got millions of bosses.
Yeah.
But they have. This place means something different to everybody who comes here regularly, like who's in love with it, right? And we all have a different piece of ground that means more to us than the rest. We all have different, figures that fought here who mean more to us than the rest. And we like to visit it the way we're used to visiting it.
Sure.
And then you come along and you say, well, we're going to close down Little Round Top to rehabilitate it because we love it too much. And people go, bah! Or you say, even in the summertime, you can't go out past sunset. And then I go, come on. And you say, tough, that's the rules.
Still no, man.
Yeah, still no. So, but how does that not drive you nuts? Seriously.
So, again, my primary mission is preserve and protect. And I have tools that tell me how to do that. I've got my enabling legislation, the parks enabling legislation. I've got laws. I've got National Park Service policy. And I've got precedent, past precedent.
Sure.
So using these things to create a defensible and logical administrative process for decision making, a transparent one. And we've tried to be transparent in this park since I've been here, defensible, consistent, and also creating systems that are sustainable. And sometimes those things are not well received because we've been able to do this all along. Well, that's against the law.
Right, doesn't mean it was right, yeah.
And, I want to make sure that we adhere to the law, whether we agree with it or not.
Sure.
And I just want to be transparent about it. The other part of that, kind of back to, whoever comes in here next, I would suggest that you've got to always have an open mind for discovery, because we only know what we know today, and we have a frame of mind, but be open to creative and new ideas. You may not pursue them always, but don't get stuck in this is the way we've always done it, because this landscape is always changing.
Sure.
And I think that's one thing that is maybe my perception, a misconception, is that this landscape has always been changing. It's continuously evolving.
Sure. This place up here?
And I feel that the Park Service, with partners, whether that's Gettysburg Foundation or American Battlefield Trust or other community members, are helping us facilitate that positive transition in preserving the battlefield. Taking restaurants and hotels and things off the battlefield and restoring it. It's always changing.
Yeah.
And I think if we understand that it's always changing, but we're changing it to preserve it and to tell those stories and to provide access and to remain relevant, I think it makes more sense. And I don't know that we will always get it right, but we're adaptable. Be adaptable.
Tim Matthews says, Gettysburg National Military Park is a gem of the National Park Service. Everyone I encounter is a complete professional. I'm so grateful for the services Gettysburg National Military Park provides, especially grateful for the focus on services those of us with physical limitations. By the way, Chief Gwynn is the best. Good luck at Valley Forge. He thinks you're going to Valley Forge. You're going to Independence.
Going to Independence.
Yeah. Philadelphia.
Yeah, Chief Gwynn is the best.
He really is.
And I have many more that are also the best. The staff here, the employees here, the volunteers and partners, they work tirelessly year-round to preserve and protect this place. And without them, this wouldn't be what it is. And it's
Totally agree.
It takes a village.
Yeah.
And this is a wonderful village to be part of. This is a phenomenal group, community to be part of.
And the
it's been an
village
honor.
people are great.
Those people are great.
Phil Fucus says, what are the biggest changes to how visitors are able to interpret when visiting Little Round Top? Well, we kind of went through that there, but anything you want to add to that? Maybe an overall.
I think one thing that we're trying to do is incorporate a resource preservation protection message in what we do, so that not only do we have the stories, human interest stories and what happened here and the importance and the context of the Civil War, but also talking about what it means to be a national park unit and to preserve and protect this in perpetuity.
Michael Keating has a good question here. What plans does the park have for interpretation on the old country club property, especially now that ABT is acquiring the other part of the track? What is the next area that will be rehabilitated after Devil's Den and Little Round Top, if any, is planned? So there's a couple questions there.
Yeah, good questions. So yeah, we did Devil's Den, we came up here and did Little Round Top. I'm currently in conversations to move over to the National Cemetery as the next major effort. And so those conversations are in place. As many of us know who've been in the National Cemetery, the Lafayette fence, the historic Lafayette fence has failed. And so that initiated a project to rehabilitate that fence, and we thought, well, while we're at it, we'll do the 2 entry gates, so that those gates are not the original gates. We want to replace them with something that's more in alignment with that original gate to really define that space and to create that grandeur entrance into the National Cemetery. We're also looking at the trees that are in there, the lack of trees that are in there, the ones that are in decline. We're looking at the gravestones and the elevations, because I think back, I'm going to get the date wrong, many decades ago they actually filled in the soil within the Civil War section, so it was an even slope versus a stair step.
Okay.
Removed the sidewalk that were in those concentric circles that met up with the alley of trees. So we're having those conversations, and my hope is that that is the next major effort. Wow. To rehabilitate.
That'll be something.
And then while we're rehabilitating that, start planning and then designing the country club rehabilitation, which will be further on down the road. And that's going to be, I'm speaking out of turn now because that's going to be somebody else's decision down the road. But if I had any influence, that would be the order. That's a good 10, 15 years worth of work.
Okay. And you're going to squeeze that all in by November 4th?
Yeah.
Wow, good for you. Good for you. Mark Cochran says, best of luck at Independence. They are very lucky getting Steve as superintendent. My question is, who is your favorite tractor dude and why is it Mark?
Well, he answered it for me. Yeah. Mark is awesome.
Mark works for the park.
Yeah. And Mark is just phenomenal. Super individual, and his whole crew. Super people. That's the crew that's taking care of the landscape, taking care of the fences, taking care of snow removal, and you see them out there. My first request is please be safe around them, because they're on the tractors and they can't see you and they can't hear you. So if you're driving, please slow down around the crew that's out there. But yeah, the staff, I could not have been luckier to have the Park Service staff that are here at Gettysburg. This community is lucky to have them.
Yeah.
Truly, and I speak from the bottom of my heart about that.
No, and I agree. As someone who interacts with a lot of them and just comes to the park as a tourist, even though I live here, they are great. I mean, and you know, nothing against any of the other parks out there, but ours are the best. Mitchell Randall says, what do you see is your biggest as your biggest legacy here at Gettysburg National Military Park?
It's not about me.
But if you had to make it about you.
It's not.
All right.
It's not about me.
There you go, Mitchell. There's your answer. It's not about him. Mitchell, what would you say is his biggest legacy? Let's see. Kirsten Bird says, I'm curious to know why he's leaving for Philadelphia. It seems like Superintendent of Gettysburg is a dream gig for so many people. After just a few years, he's leaving for Philly. Just curious to know why.
Well, I will say that this has been a dream gig. This has been an absolutely phenomenal experience. And it's, again, wonderful community, wonderful park, wonderful mission. It is a dream. It is wonderful. Independence it's bittersweet to go to Independence, but the 250th anniversary of our nation's coming up.
Yeah.
And I'll be at the tip of the spear, so to speak, for that celebration of our country, which has a lot of connections to the stories here at Gettysburg too. And I'm excited for the new challenge. And I'll also say there's never a good time to change jobs. But when opportunities present themselves and you feel that tug, like a lot of people feel that tug when they come here to Gettysburg, that pulls them here, I had that tug.
I know the tug, so I can't argue with you.
And so I appreciate the question, and I'm going to miss everyone here at Gettysburg.
Well, we're going to miss you too. Going back to Mitchell's question, let me tweak it a little bit. What is your fondest memory of being superintendent here? Besides, obviously, hanging out with us and being on the Addressing Gettysburg.
Maybe the Beavers. No, you know, I can't put it on one thing.
Okay.
This is a collective experience on so many different levels, whether it's working with the staff, the partners, the projects, the programming, the messaging, the guest speakers that we have here, the opportunity to meet so many phenomenal people. Yeah, I'm the one that's honored to have been here. It's just a phenomenal thing.
Good. Let's see here. All right, well, so that's it for the questions. I have to thank you personally. Thank you for coming on Addressing Gettysburg. You made us seem a little bit more legitimate by doing that. I know that the audience really appreciated it. I think it was last October, you came to the studio, you took questions from people on the phone, and then last April we were going to do it again, but you said, hey, wouldn't you rather go up a little round top? And I was like, hell yes I would. So we did it that way, and then now we're doing it again here. You've been very gracious and accepting of what we do and encouraging, and I really truly appreciate that. And as a citizen of the United States, I must tell you, I think you've done a fantastic job at the park here. You know my issue with the park hours, so that we'll just put aside. But otherwise, you know, it was kind of like the Wild West here before you came, and it's nice to see that Wyatt Earp is here, and it's getting tame. Although I don't know if Wyatt Earp is a good example, but anyway. You've tamed the place, and it's remarkable the things that have gotten done in just, what, 3 years you've been here?
Almost 4.
Almost 4. Yeah, so that's pretty good. And so I want to thank you very much, Steve. Personally, and as a visitor to Gettysburg here, I think that most people out there will agree with me. You did a fantastic job.
Thank
and we're very lucky to have had you.
And I'll say you are a friend of the park. Addressing Gettysburg is a friend of the park. You've been fair and supportive, and you demonstrate appreciation for the staff, and I thank you for that. Thanks for being a friend.
My pleasure. Traveled down the road and back again. The Golden Girls was a great show. One of my favorites. Anyway, that's it. I want to thank Mark for, your back must be killing you carrying all this stuff. Can I buy you dinner, Mark? Maybe another night. All right, thank you all for watching, and see you next time, whenever that is.